genetic DNA testing. So this is a fascinating development. It's exploded the last few decades. What you do is you get a Q-tip, you swab it on the inside of your cheek. This collects some of your cells. Then you send that in, and then those cells get tested for DNA. And there's so many things you can test about your DNA. And obviously, I'm sure you've heard about all these different things. You can find out about your heritage, your ancestors, where they were from. You can find out other things that are not necessarily going to help you improve wellness. Like, for example, you can find out, do you have a cleft chin? Do you have a widow's peak in your hairline? Do you have a proclivity for crow's feet around your eyes? These are things that are genetic markers that you could spend money and get tested, but it's not really going to give you useful information to implement. Now, the most helpful information I've come across is testing the methylation genes of the body. There are 5 genes in particular. There's more than 5, but there's 5 in particular that are extremely helpful to test for. And basically what this tells you is how the cells are processing certain elements, and either they're functioning or they're not functioning. And these processes are either happening efficiently or they're not. What's being tested for most specifically is whether the enzyme activity is suppressed or it's low. And if this enzyme activity is suppressed, that means the process is not being carried out. The job of this particular gene is not, it's not being done, or it's being done halfway. And this creates a domino effect, because one process leads to the next process, leads to the next. And if one of those chains is broken, it can affect so many things in your life, and that you didn't even know the cause of. And this is where it gets really fascinating. Not only can it cause dysfunction systematically, but now you can wind up with unprocessed materials in the body that don't get used for anything. And now this basically can create an obstruction, something that has to be even detoxed out, and that potentially could create a lack of ease, in the body, and issues with being unbalanced. So what the test will tell you is, for these different genes, did you receive a mutation from one side of your family, from your mom, or from your dad, or from both? If you receive it from one side and the enzymatic activity is suppressed, then that would indicate that the gene is functioning at a low level, approximately half it's functioning at. If you received a mutation from both sides, then this could indicate that the functioning level is very, very low, perhaps even close to 0% function. Extremely dysfunctional. And so I'm telling you, this is fascinating. When I got my gene tests back, it really how can I put this? It really explained a lot to me, because it almost made me tear up, because through my whole life I've always felt blessed, and I've always felt grateful, and like I had a beautiful existence and purpose of being here on this planet. But I always felt like there was things that were wrong with me, and I never really understood why. And when I got this test done, it gave me a vision into what was going on inside of me, and some, you could call it dysfunction, or you could call it idiosyncrasy, or things about me that I'm like, I don't know why do I behave like this? Like, why do I feel like this? And and why do I have to bug out and get weird over certain things, and or I'm not as functional as I want to be in an area, and I don't know why. This information clicked. It was so clear when this came back, and it really helped me. It made me feel better, because it made me feel like, you know what, it's not all my fault. I've been given this body, thanks mom and dad or whatever, but it's like it has these dysfunctions in it, and the genes are more or less fixed, at least from what I can tell. I don't know how much you can change these. I've heard it said that you can't. Maybe you can, but basically, this is amazing to get this information back. So I'm going to talk about each of the genes, and basically, if you do get a test, what to look for, and maybe some of the solutions if you have a break in one of these genes. Now, I will just mention, you can find the test. Now, the test is around, at least at the time of recording, you can find a very high quality test for around $300, and you can find that test at rapidregeneration.com/DNA test. But here is, based on my deep research, how each one of these genes breaks down, and how much of what I might consider doing to solve the issue. And a lot of these are very common, so don't feel bad if you have gene breaks. I actually had 3 gene mutations out of the 5. 2 of them were only from one side of the family, and 1 of them was from both sides. So find out, consider doing it for yourself. Consider doing it for your parents, for your children. This could just help give so much insight into how to handle certain issues or why certain things are happening. So